A few weeks ago, I was scrolling through memes, as usual, and I came across something that caught my eye. It was your typical ironic impact font top text bottom text meme, but the words and the picture made no sense to me. It was some kind of gray rolled up newspaper looking thing on a gradient background with text reading, "I don't remember asking." Now, for those who are unfamiliar with this type of humor, these kinds of images are actually quite run of the mill, but the image and the caption typically make some sense together. Looking to the comments, I saw people saying things like Stage 6 moment and making reference to something called Everywhere at the End of Time. Upon looking it up, I saw it was some kind of weird 6.5-hour album of experimental music. I still didn't understand what the text had to do with the image, but I figured it was just your average random humor, so I kept scrolling and moved on. About a week later, this same image of the gray object caught my eye again, only this time on YouTube. Immediately, I remembered the perplexing meme that I had seen a few days earlier. Now I was interested. I watched the video and a few others that explained what in the world this strange thing was. This image was the album cover for the first stage of a series of 6 albums that made up a large project with the title Everywhere at the End of Time, an experimental music piece designed to simulate the various stages of dementia. Now, you're probably thinking, what does that even mean? And trust me, so was I. Discovering this strange work of art sent me down a rabbit hole that made me feel a plethora of emotions, not the least of which was fear and sadness, but also a strange sense of peace. In this video, I'm going to try and encapsulate the experience and hopefully give you a good representation of what this obscure masterpiece really is. Leyland Kirby, better known by his alias The Caretaker, is the creator of this massive 6-album project. The Caretaker is an ambient music artist who put himself on the map by creating experimental music under many different titles, with The Caretaker being the one that stuck. He initially gained notoriety with the release of the album An Empty Bliss Beyond This World, an ambient music compilation that attempted to capture the feeling of dementia using samples of jazzy ballroom music from the early 1900s. That album received much praise, and Kirby decided to begin work on another much larger project that would expand on the same theme of exploring dementia through music and sound. Thus began the production of Everywhere at the End of Time. Each album of the project is titled as stages, 1 to 6 respectively, to portray the progressing stages of dementia. Each album was released 6 months apart in order to simulate the time between each stage, spanning from September 2016 to March of 2019. If you don't know, dementia is an umbrella term for a number of brain disorders, the most notable of which is Alzheimer's. Essentially, it is a horrible, brain-degenerating disease that causes progressive memory loss to the point of death. This, by itself, is an extremely mature topic, as the disease itself is genuinely horrifying and sad, and more importantly, real. The memory loss is accompanied by mood changes, personality altering, among a long list of other issues. I won't make this a video explaining what dementia and Alzheimer's is, but it's definitely something you'll want to be aware of. All you need to know is that there are typically 7 stages documented with a dementia patient, each stage bringing worse and worse degradation of the mind. Stage 1 of dementia is the stage that everybody goes through: nothing. This is likely why the project is only 6 albums long, as a true Stage 1, or maybe better titled Stage 0, is unnecessary, as it would be completely just unaltered music. Kirby intended this to be his final piece of work under the alias of The Caretaker. He stated that the project had been given dementia, personifying the Caretaker alias into a character, making it so the project itself has dementia, and listening to the albums is getting to experience the mental degradation that the character goes through. Upon completion, the project had gained much critical praise and a decent amount of attention, or as much attention as something this obscure can get. But in October of 2020, Everywhere at the End of Time got its 15 minutes of fame in the infamous TikTok spotlight. It became one of those spooky trends akin to Momo, Slenderman, or any other creepypasta-esque art. Due to the long 6.5-hour runtime and difficult to listen to ambient sound, listening to the project in full became somewhat of a challenge. This surge of popularity has, in my opinion, acted as a double-edged sword. I say that only because when something like this nuanced and detailed kind of niche art gets thrown into the spotlight, much of the audience engaging in the trend either completely misses the point by turning it into a creepypasta challenge, or fundamentally misunderstands it entirely, trashing it for being weird, too long or being just random noises. To an onlooker with no immediate context other than hearing snippets of the distorted audio with allusions to its theme of dementia, I can see how the project can be easily dismissed in one's mind. But I said this was double-edged for a reason. Like anything that gains popularity, it is going to be met with a large amount of negative feedback, most of which is unfounded. But the bright side is that through this massive exposure, many people came upon it who do genuinely appreciate what it is trying to get across, people who otherwise would not have ever found it. I would consider myself to be a part of that group. Even though I didn't find it through TikTok and was several months late to its exposure, there was no doubt that its permeation into meme culture was the reason for me stumbling upon it. I am not into experimental or ambient music or even music in general at all, really, but this has piqued my interest like almost nothing ever has before. With all that being said, I think by now you understand what the project is and how it became popular, which leads us to an actual look at the music itself. I'm going to try and give you an expedited rundown of what it is like to listen to this album in full and do my best as a music amateur to describe just how well made this series of albums truly is. So after I discovered the album and listened to bits and pieces, even entire stages multiple times, I was invested. I found this thing so interesting that I just knew I had to make a video about it, but I couldn't do it alone. I knew that if I was going to make a proper review of the project, I'd need to do my due diligence and actually listen to it entirely, which was something I didn't really want to do in my room alone at night. So instead of doing it in my room alone at night, I decided to do it in my room alone at night with Slime Nugget on Discord. About a week after discovering it, I told him about it, knowing that he would find it interesting as well. We agreed to listen to it together on stream, and here we are. Hopefully snippets from our experience will be able to string together a bit of a narrative for this review. Anyway, Stage 1 is actually pretty fun to listen to. Some people think even Stage 1 is unnerving, and I'll be honest, when I first found out about the project, as I skimmed through the various sections, it kind of all gave me the creeps, especially knowing the context. But really, the first stage is basically just slowed down and slightly reverbed 1920s to 40s ballroom music. It is slow, calming, mostly upbeat, and all around peaceful. Each stage comes with a description from the artist, each one providing context to the segment of music. Stage 1's description reads as follows. Here we experience the first signs of memory loss. This stage is most like a beautiful daydream, the glory of old age and recollection, the last of the great days. Stage 1, and really by extension the second and third stages, are all very much like the prototype, so to speak, for this project, An Empty Bliss Beyond This World. Listening to it was fun, with each song giving a nice variety of both upbeat and soothing sound to an occasionally melancholy or even somber style. Some of these are real bangers, like I'm not even lying.
No, this is like fire.
This is good.
Yeah.
The most famous piece from this stage by far is the opening track, A1, It's Just a Burning Memory. It's the most recognizable song from the entire project for a few reasons, not the least of which is that it is the first thing that anyone hears when visiting this video online. But it also is the song that repeats the most, finding its way into every stage in one way or another. We'll take a look at its progression as we move through the stages. The song is genuinely catchy and has a very nice sound to it. It is sampled from the song Heartaches by British musician Al Bowley. This being the original sample has led some to believe that the project hints at the characters' memories having a lot to do with a lost or forgotten spouse. Just listen to the lyrics.
Your kiss was such a sacred thing to me. I can't believe it's just a burning memory.
We were enjoying it. It was calm, peaceful, and relatively happy. This stage perfectly encapsulates the feeling it is trying to convey, the idea of being in a state right before the problem begins to become very noticeable. The music is mostly clear, intelligible, and there is an overwhelming feeling of content. The character in the album has no idea what is about to happen, only the very slightest amount of memory loss is occurring, and they are experiencing the last of the great days.
This is good music though. I like this. This is like a song that I could hear like being played like normally.
At this point we were having a blast. Stage 1 is only about 40 minutes long, one of the shortest of the bunch, so it didn't take long for things to start taking a bit of a turn.
This is a lot more peaceful than I was expecting.
Oh wait! Look at that! Stage 2 already.
Stage 2 already.
Stage 2 begins a decline both in audio quality as well as mood. It opens with a track that has a repeating loop of static behind it, and the track itself has this almost innocent feel to it, like a mix of naivety and sadness. It feels like the character knows something is starting to feel off, but can't exactly figure out what it is. The description is as such. The second stage is the self-realization and awareness that something is wrong with a refusal to accept that. More effort is made to remember so memories can be more long-form with a little more deterioration in quality. The overall personal mood is generally lower than the first stage and at a point before confusion starts setting in. Stage 2 might be my personal favorite, as it is where the nuances really start to show. The songs are now a bit more staticky, some trail off a bit, and overall they convey an unnerving tone. Most of the songs are not outright scary or anything, but they have a feeling of tension, fear, sadness, and confusion. Each song adds something new to the table as far as the progression of the atmosphere being created goes. The second track, Misplaced in Time, perfectly encapsulates the mood of this entire stage. It's a little dark, a little mysterious, and low sounding, like the listener is coming to a sad realization. The third track is another appearance of Heartaches, only this time it is much slower and sounds almost cartoonishly aged. So this is the first song.
The first song again, okay. But it's gonna be a little bit different.
Yeah, it's a little bit different, as you can hear. The fourth track exudes a feeling of absolute terror. This is the point where it seems the character has fully come to realize that something is horribly wrong, and it is terrifying.
I'll be honest, Jake, I can't tell. Oh.
I told you. There are still some somber, calm-sounding tracks mixed within, which now take on a much more sad context, considering it could be related to the character attempting to deny the issue, instead focusing on the good things and what's left of happy feelings. The fifth track, Surrendering to Despair, all the way through the eighth track, Denial Unraveling, demonstrates this. It is a brief interlude in what is about to become much more depressing music. The final track of Stage 2 is called The Way Ahead Feels Lonely, a very sad commentary on the true loneliness of the disease as memories fade and everyone and everything you know is unrecognizable. I'm sure the experience is in fact quite lonely. Thankfully, I had Slime Nugget to get through it so it wasn't too lonely.
Wait, this sounds like a soundtrack for like a really sad like movie. That's the vibe I'm starting to get now. It's like some like Pixar like soundtrack.
This stage was obviously still easy to listen to. We didn't have any issues getting through it and remained having fun playing Minecraft while listening. Overall, I think this is where the project shines the most. The later sections are very experimental in nature, and I suppose this stage is too, but it is just normal enough to be able to be put on in the background without inducing too many nightmares. The caretaker was able to make the music have a mix of mystery / confusion, fear, anxiety, sorrow, melancholy, and even bits of attempts at happiness. I guess the question is, would all of these themes and feelings be recognizable if it weren't for knowing the context of the album's take on dementia? Personally, I'd say that yes, the music, regardless of the context, carries these moods with it. That is what is so unique about music. It can tell a story that even the listener can make up by using only cues and general sound. Even with the knowledge of its meaning, it is not as though there are lyrics added or a movie to go along with it. Either way, you must interpret each song in your own way. Sure, listening to it without knowing that it's about dementia probably wouldn't make you come to the conclusion that that's what it was, but I don't think that diminishes its value. Again, especially because of the very subjective medium we're looking at here as far as interpretations go. Stage 2 is by no means the end of the project's ability to strongly convey emotion. I just think that it accomplishes a very specific feeling while still being something that you could listen to normally. Which brings us to the last of the quote-unquote normal sounding stages, if that means anything, Stage 3. Stage 3 is where it becomes abundantly clear that something is wrong. This album opens up with a very upbeat song that just doesn't sound quite right. It trails off at times and is a bit disorienting. Heartaches appears again, now sounding far off, distant, muffled, and strained. It has lost all of its initial upbeat and joyful feeling, now sounding stressful rather than calming. It appears later again in the stage in F4, Burning Despair Does Ache, and F8, Mournful Camaraderie, but far worse than ever before, now extremely muffled, jerky, and glitchy. This stage is unique in the way that it actually degrades as it goes. Stage 1 and 2 keep their respective quality for the whole album, but Stage 3 starts off not too bad and actually gets worse as it goes. It gets more and more muffled, scary, and glitchy, eventually turning practically to ambient noise at times, and at others just plain weirdness. It is unnerving, strained, and forced at times, like the song Le Baiser All Joyful Camaraderie, which sounds almost violent in the way it's being played. E8 Long-Term Dusk Glimpses is one of those very melancholy sounding tracks that has a nice tune to it. It just kind of makes you feel nothing. It's not really upbeat enough to be happy, but the general sound isn't really depressing or creepy, it's just kind of empty. And that's the purpose. F3 Internal Bewildered World is where it gets really weird. Now the music is so slowed, reverbed, and muffled that it is almost unrecognizable. It is like a fading memory, something that the character is trying to hold on to, but it is far too out of their reach. From this track to the end of the stage, it is as though the final memories are being captured and released, with long bouts of creepy ambience interrupted by actual music once again, demonstrating the erratic and unpredictable way that the memories are being destroyed. This seems to line up well with this section's description. Here we are presented with some of the last coherent memories before confusion fully rolls in and the grey mists form and fade away. Finest moments have been remembered, the musical flow in places is more confused and tangled. As we progress, some singular memories become more disturbed, isolated, broken, and distant. These are the last embers of awareness before we enter the post-awareness stages. The stage ends with the final track, F8 Mournful Camaraderie, which is nearly pure ambience that almost has the sound of normal music, but it is so slowed and reverbed it's impossible to make out. Overall, this stage is where it goes bad. And by bad, I mean hard to listen to. The songs are unapologetically creepy, like E7 Bewildered in Other Eyes, which sounds like a Jack-in-the-Box song or something.
Oh, this is creepy, Jake.
I know.
Wait, this sounds like a toy box, like Five Nights at Freddy's, like, thing.
This is where the experimental stuff really starts to show, as it is moving away from the normal music now to glitchy and straight up fear-inducing songs. It's past the point of being anything calming, and you can tell that this is where the character has truly lost their mind. There's really not much I can say about Stage 3. It is something you might have to listen to on your own to fully understand, as listening to the album in full shows you just how sporadic the clear music is mixed in with the borderline unintelligible distant noise. It truly feels like you are starting to go a bit crazy listening to this one, and by now you have trouble remembering the good old days of stages 1 and 2 that weren't so terrifying. We were still enjoying it at this point, being somewhat distracted by Minecraft. I knew it was coming though. I had personally listened all the way through stages 1 to 3 on my own multiple times by this point, and knew the switch from stage 3 to 4 was drastic, so I was savoring each moment of actual music while stage 3 lasted. Stage 4 is the official beginning of the end. The transition from 3 to 4 is brutal, it hits like a truck. 1 second you're listening to somewhat intelligible ambient music, the next is just random noises. I say random noises, but really it feels almost handcrafted. Now, I know that it's not exactly done by hand because Kirby actually used a computer program for these sections, generating hundreds of hours of these sounds and then selecting which portions to use. Even still, the garbled mess actually has some design to it. Every couple seconds, through the cacophony, there will be even just a second or two of music that you can actually make out. As this stage progresses, there are a handful of times where the music returns to something intelligible for but a brief instant, as though the character is remembering something even slightly. Stages as such. Post-awareness stage 4 is where serenity and the ability to recall singular memories gives way to confusions and horror. It's the beginning of an actual process where all memories begin to become more fluid through entanglements, repetition, and rupture. There are no longer traditional songs in this stage, there are just 4 tracks, each one roughly 20 minutes long. The first one is mostly just garbled sound with occasional bouts of somewhat detectable music, all with this sinister empty sound behind it. It sounds almost like wind going through a large tunnel. The next track is almost entirely static and mixed up sound, now losing the more frequent amount of actual music, and also without the loud empty background noise. The track after that is called I1 Stage 4 Temporary Bliss State, and you can probably imagine what that means. The music is now a heavily altered and distorted version of the track from Stage 3, E7 Bewildered in Other Eyes. The title implies that the character is going through a small state of bliss. Perhaps they have for but a moment forgotten what is going on and are focused on whatever happiness is left in them. The final track of Stage 4 begins like the others, but then fades into a more ambient, calm sound, with far less garbled music, turning to mostly static and a repeating piano note that almost sounds like a bell ringing over and over. The track fades into static, and then the next stage begins. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention one of the main attractions of this stage, something the fans have labeled the Hell Sirens. Now, that probably sounds horrible, and that's because it is. About 2 hours and 46 minutes into the project, a sample of music begins to play that sounds extremely eerie, almost like distant sirens or long drawn-out trumpet blasts. Then suddenly, this awful sound plays. Oh, Hell
Sirens. Stop. Play stick fight while listening to Hell Sirens.
The popular theory is that this signifies that the character was in a war, possibly World War II, and this moment in the stage is when he is being tormented by the distorted memories of that experience, the Hell Siren being a twisted fragment of some kind of alarm or siren from the war. This may be the case, or it is just meant to be a purposefully terrifying sound, perhaps a moment of slight lucidity for the character as he realizes just how far gone he is and how terrifying his reality has actually become. Another thing that may relate this specifically to World War II is that the musician who made the principal sample Heartaches, Al Boley, was met with an untimely death in August of 1941, a victim of a German air raid. What is really interesting about the Hell Sirens is that this is not a sample of an actual siren or anything like that. It is actually an extremely altered and distorted sample of this Latin orchestra song. Here are the Hell Sirens unaltered. Overall, this stage is painful to listen to. It's creepy, unnerving, and generally disorienting. At this point in the stream we were playing Stick Fight, which made the experience more bearable, but it was still very difficult to sit through without becoming uneasy. The entire stage feels like a confused mess, which is exactly what it's going for. It's easy to dismiss it as just garbled sound, but thinking about it from the perspective of the character, so to speak, it feels dreadfully saddening. Before, the songs used to be full, intelligible, even calming at times, and now, all that can be heard of the songs is out-of-context notes, torn apart tunes, and the occasional few seconds of anything recognizable. Unfortunately for us, this type of sound would not cease for quite a while. Like Stage 4, Stage 5 is comprised of 4 tracks, each one about 20 minutes in length. Now, the garbled mess from the previous tracks is even more constant and random, with a consistent stream of distorted notes, static, and now even strange whistling noises and what sounds like altered and reversed voice samples. There are also long stints of empty sound with distorted notes in the background serving as breaks in between the madness, which seems to be supported by this stage's description. Post-awareness Stage 5 confusions and horror. More extreme entanglements, repetition, and rupture can give way to calmer moments. The unfamiliar may sound and feel familiar. Time is often spent only in the moment leading to isolation. I don't really have much to say regarding the first 3 tracks of this stage, as they are very similar to Stage 4 with some minor differences in style. Overall, Stage 5 is just depressing. It's where all real memories are just destroyed and reality is unrecognizable, which leads us into the final stage. Post-awareness Stage 6 is without description. That is the description of this stage provided by the caretaker. That alone should give you insight on what this stage is actually like. Stage 6 is perhaps the most interesting and unique of all of the 3 ambient sound stages. Once again, it is made up of 4 tracks, each one roughly 20 minutes long. The first 3 are almost entirely just empty noise. That sound I mentioned earlier, that empty backtrack that sounds like wind in a giant tunnel, is basically the entirety of this stage. There's the occasional random distorted notes and mixed in static, but it really mainly is this feeling of emptiness. That is the best word I can use to describe it. It feels as though now the character is in an almost brain-dead state. No more memories are being recalled, there isn't any emotion or even an attempt at lucidity. This stage was at least somewhat easy to listen to. It's still slightly unnerving, but it's at this point where you are glad that the strange garbled noises are done. You feel as though the character has reached not a state of peace, but at least a state where they can't even tell anymore what's happened to them. As far as a peaceful state goes, the final track of this entire project is one of the most mysterious. It begins with the empty noise, but is then filled by the sound of long extended notes that sound peaceful. Then that sound cuts off abruptly and transitions into what sounds like people shuffling. Then a clear, intelligible, and only slightly staticky piano which is accompanied by human voices singing. The voices are kind of distorted in the sense that they sound a bit muffled and as though they were like bursting the speakers that they're being played through. I don't exactly know how to describe it. The song sounds like a send-off song. It is calm, peaceful, somber with a hint of sadness. Let me tell you, after 4 hours of garbled sound and ambient emptiness, this is a shock. Now we're actually hearing real music at the end of the madness. It is thought that this song represents the person's death, the sweet release from the torture of being trapped in a decaying mind. Although it is sad that the person has died, it is almost relieving. And that sense of relief is absolutely felt after such a long time of audio hell. That song slowly fades away and the final minute of the album is silence, thought to be the moment of silence at a funeral procession. This stage definitely evokes an emotional feeling as you feel a sense of happiness that it is over, but also a deep sadness for the character who had to go through the degradation of the mind, something you, by listening, were able to get a glimpse of. Talking about Everywhere at the end of time simply doesn't do it justice. It is such a long, nuanced, and in-depth experience that no amount of videos, commentaries, or discussions about it can really make you understand exactly what it is. Listening to it in full, if you can find the time, is genuinely fascinating. I can't really call it fun or pleasurable, but it definitely makes you feel a certain way. Again, the 6-album project is just so much, and my knowledge on music is so little that I truly cannot express with words enough how good it is. It touches on a subject that is very uncomfortable to think about, a terrifying disease arguably worse than any cancer, disorder, or sickness. Because rather than degrading the body, dementia or Alzheimer's degrades the mind itself. It destroys the person it comes upon and puts them and their loved ones through unspeakable pain. I have not personally known anyone with this disease, but to know that it could happen to anyone is what makes the topic so hard. The project, through using only music, as well as the album covers which are each extremely well made and descriptive in their own right, is able to give an experience, not just an emotion or an interesting sound, but a real experience that gives the listener, if only but a glimpse into the world of a person with dementia. Obviously, listening to a 6.5 hour long piece of audio is not comparable to going through the years worth of real torture that is dementia, but through this project anyone can at least begin to understand what the disease is, not in a scholarly or clinical way, but in a way that allows you to feel something, which is, I assume, the entire point. I suggest that you do the same thing that I did. I discovered it, watched some videos on it, but then I decided to actually put in the time to listen to it. Give it a listen. Don't listen to it as a challenge or because it's a funny meme, but because it's a real, genuine piece of art that deserves proper recognition. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I was able to spark your interest. Again, I'm only scratching the surface on the awesomeness of this project, so please get into it yourself to fully grasp it the way it was meant to be. If you did enjoy this video, please let me know in the comments and give it a like. More videos like this are on the way. Take care. It's a desert out there.